Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nancy, and we're empty nesters striving to live life to the fullest.
And we're living it in Sydney on the Bridge!
Sydney, Australia! That's right, friends. Well, as you saw in the intro, we are in Sydney, Australia, and it is a beautiful city. It's just so much to see. And the sail-in was equally as beautiful. It was just stunning to watch as we approached towards the Opera House and the Sydney Bridge. And Mike, you were so good. You took some time lapse of our approach. You had a couple of cameras mounted on the ship. So and we will show that time lapse at the end of the video here.
Right. So if you want to see the whole time lapse, just stay after the music plays at the outro, and you can watch the whole thing from two different angles. We had a camera on the balcony and a camera on the bow, because really Sydney, as Nancy said, it is one of the best sail-ins you will ever see. And in fact, you can see here, people were lined up on the ship and everyone was watching us as we sailed into Sydney Harbor. And it really was. It was a dream come true. Interesting part about the way we started our day, we had to start parked out in Sydney Harbor, and we tendered in, but the tender was amazing. So we were tendered right at the Opera House. So our tender pulled up, we stepped off, and there was the iconic Sydney Opera House right there in front of us, and we walked off and walked up the steps. That's where we were actually even meeting our tour guide, because we had a tour scheduled just as an overview of Sydney that a friend of ours put together. There were 10 of us, and we got together and went on this small group tour. But yeah, what a way to start the day right there at the Sydney Opera House.
It was. And the reason we had to tender it, because our ship actually docked later on, is there was a Virgin cruise ship that was in at the port, and so we had to wait for it to pull out, and then our ship was able to pull in later in the afternoon.
Right, so they tendered until 1:30, and then after 1:30 the ship docked, and so then later that night you'll see we just walked back on the ship from the cruise terminal. We didn't have to tender back, which was really nice. And in fact, we have a whole day here in Sydney we're going to cover for you, because we don't actually get back to the ship till almost 11:30 at night, because we packed so much into this day.
Full.
Oh, we were so excited about Sydney. Well, Nancy, tell us about this tour that we started on in the morning.
Our tour started by going actually onto the Sydney Bridge. Now, we were going to climb it later on today, but there were others that were in our group that weren't doing the climb. And so just to say that they had been on the Sydney Bridge, we did walk, where the cars are going, there's a walkway there. And so they could say they had been on the Sydney Bridge.
Yeah, we walked about 100 yards out, got some nice views, again, of the Opera House, of our ship, etc., and then walked back down, and we went to the Argyle Steps to get down off the bridge.
Right, and the Argyle Steps led us to an area called the Rocks. And the Rocks in Sydney is a very old part of town. It was kind of, for a while, really kind of a slummy part of town.
Right. A lot of bars, a lot of poverty, and it was known as a very bad part of town in the background.
Right, but not any longer. It's been revitalized, and while we're down, there are a lot of bars down there. There's a lot of nightlife down there, but there's a street down there. It was called the Suez Canal, which Suez means sewage, and so it was just a really nasty street there for a while.
Yeah, that's where the sewage would flow down from the Rocks down through the Suez Canal and down to Sydney Harbor. Well, here's the interesting part is, as many of you know, we have now been rerouted. We're going around Africa. We originally were going to go through the Suez Canal with our ship. Well, we got to walk the Suez Canal. And so we walked down that narrow street to say we did pass through the Suez Canal.
Thankfully, it's all cleaned up.
That's right, yeah. But the Rocks was really a wonderful place. And in fact, we visit the Rocks later after our bridge climb to go have a little dinner, and that's really what it's about. It's nightlife, it's bars, it's restaurants, and it's a lot of fun down there. You could spend a great evening down in the Rocks.
Absolutely. Well, being that this is an older part of the city, some of the buildings, the architecture, the buildings were made out of sandstone that you can see here, and the convicts did a lot of carving to make the blocks of the sandstone, but there's a lot of history here.
Yeah, there's a ton of it. Unfortunately, Sydney went through a period of time around the 20s and 30s where they decided they want to become a Renaissance city, and they wanted to look like New York City rather than their own distinctive character. So they tore down a lot of these sandstone buildings, and fortunately in the Rocks and a couple other places, some of them still remain. And now Sydney really embraces that. In fact, they're really starting to embrace their whole culture and their whole background.
Heritage, yeah.
We didn't really realize this. I mean, we always joke and heard, oh yeah, Australia was a penal colony, but we didn't, as Americans, we never really thought much of it. But what we heard is that the Australians themselves quite often didn't embrace that background. They always kind of just put that to the side, and they didn't like to talk about, our ancestors were, a prisoner or a convict of some sort. Well, what we were told by our guide is after the 2000 Olympics, the Olympics were done so well, and Australia did an amazing job with the Olympics. That led to a lot of national pride, which then led to a lot of people reaching back, looking at their heritage, and not being embarrassed or ashamed of how they got here, and maybe that their great-great-grandfather was a convict or something. And it's nice to see them embrace that history, that culture, and to be proud, because the Australian people really, Australia's a wonderful country, and they have a lot to be proud of. So It was really nice to hear that. Well, we continued our walk through the Rocks. We actually saw a fascinating example. They used to make the streets out of timber. They'd drive the timber down, and
cool.
like cobblestones, but it was made from timber. So I thought, being an engineer, I thought that was very fascinating. Yeah. And then we actually got our first glimpse.
We did. So we're close to the bridge, the Sydney Bridge, and the people had started to climb the bridge. And so we're looking up, and we're like, well, that's where we're going to be here in a few hours.
Yeah, it was.
It's exciting.
So then we got back on the bus and we went out to
Mrs. McQuarrie's Point.
Yeah, and that was really fascinating. Again, Sydney's a very walkable town. You could walk over within, half an hour maybe over to Mrs. McQuarrie's Point. But it's a nice park. It sticks right out into Sydney Harbor and has a wonderful history. And Mrs. McQuarrie's Point, so the governor of Sydney, his wife always wanted a place where she could just enjoy and watch the ships go by. And this whole area was part of their residence. So this was not where the commoners could come. But she had carved out a little piece of the stone here that she would just sit and watch the ships. And so now it's very famous, and you can see the logo or the writing on the top for women that come to visit Sydney to sit at Mrs. McQuarrie's chair on Mrs. McQuarrie's Point and look out onto the harbor and look for the ships. And so we got a nice picture of you doing that. It's real traditional to do that. Yeah.
This park area was very beautiful, and we saw an interesting bird there. It was called the ibis bird, and our guide said that they ruin a lot of picnics because they are a smelly bird, and they're almost overpopulating and just a nuisance now at this point.
Yeah.
But I thought they were quite fascinating.
Yeah, it did. It's a bird that we don't see, of course, in the United States, and we're like, oh, that's really cool. And you go, oh, they're like rats. They're everywhere, and they're terrible. So it's interesting how different animals can become pests in different areas, and we wouldn't even think of them that way. But yeah, it was an interesting bird. Yeah.
We got back on the van, and as we're driving to our next location, we're driving past the Sydney Museum, and there is a sculpture of a huge spider, like a big 6-ton spider. It was designed by a woman called Louise Bourgeois. It's called Mammon, and it stands for mother. It's to honor her mother, because mothers are so protective, and she felt like spiders were very protective. She had a lot of respect for spiders. So there's this huge spider in front of the museum
in honor of her mother.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a very famous sculpture. So we didn't actually get to stop. We kind of got more of a drive-by picture, but it's quite impressive. You don't miss it. It's quite impressive. Yeah.
As we continued driving, we went to Watson's Bay Overlook with the South Head Cliffs, and that was a pretty area to see, to look over the bay.
Yeah, it was, and it really showed us how many hiking and walking and biking trails they have here in Sydney. You could just walk and walk for miles. We know when we come back, and we're saying, spoiler alert, we are going to come back. This was
Sydney,
amazing.
absolutely.
Oh, just an amazing city. We would just love to take a day and just walk some of these trails and walk the cliffs, walk some of the city trails. That was really nice. I enjoyed that. After that, we walked on down, and it was lunchtime, and we went to have some fish and chips.
We did. I love fish and chips.
You do. You do.
And the name of the restaurant was Doyle's Fisherman's Wharf.
Yeah.
And it was delicious.
Yeah, really good fish. It wasn't just you could tell it was fresh fish, fried not overly breaded. The funny thing was, well, we just, you could order just an individual fish and chips, and we kind of looked at the price and all that. We said, oh, well, we'll just order some pieces of fish and some fries. And when it came out, it was a ridiculous amount of
could have fed a family.
And it was still less expensive than 2 fish and chips,
right?
But yeah, it was too bad that it was just way too many chips. But it was really good. It was very, very good.
Ice cream afterwards.
Yes, we went to the little ice cream stand. You had some mint chocolate or mint cookie ice cream, I believe, and that was good. Really good. It was quite good. Well, we got back on the bus and headed to one of the most famous beaches in Australia,
Bondi Beach, and there was even a TV show that was filmed there at
Bondi Beach Rescue or something like that. Yeah,
and just friends, just so you know. Tops are optional at this beach, so
yeah.
I think our video's okay.
Yeah. I think that we're not catching anything in this video, but you can see it's a beautiful beach. Although it is kind of interesting. Again, there's an expression. I'm not sure if we've told you this or not. They tell us over and over, everything in Australia wants to kill you, and so they warn you and warn you. They have poisonous snakes, they have spiders, they have crocodiles, they have everything. Well, even the ocean is trying to kill you. So they have a very specific part where you can swim, and that's marked between 2 red and yellow flags. And so you'll kind of notice on the beach how there's a big line of people in a narrow strip going out to go swimming, because that's the part that's been marked as safe from rip currents and jellyfish and sharks and everything else. So beautiful beach, nice crescent, beautiful water, lots of surfing, and there were even people taking surfing lessons while we're out there. So it was an interesting stop. We didn't actually get to go to the beach, and it is kind of it's a little bit of a beach where people go to, see and be seen, right? It's a lot of people looking for that, but it was a beautiful beach. Enjoyed that, yeah. And while we were there, we stopped by a little souvenir shop, and I just had to get a picture of this kangaroo. I don't know. I thought its head nodding was just. It
was cute.
It was really cute, yeah. And,
I got my Christmas ornament there.
You did. You got an ornament of the Sydney Bridge, and I think if I remember right, I got a patch there now I have an Australian patch. So yeah. Well, after the gift shop, we went to
some other beaches, and we just drove by them, but they're very beautiful. And after that, then we went to Centennial Park, and Centennial Park was a very pretty place. It was the original water source for Sydney for many years.
Yeah, now it's a massive city park. People come out there to play, to spend time, to just relax. It'd go biking, hiking. It was really nice. But the neat thing we saw there was
the gray-headed flying foxes, which are fruit bats.
Yes.
And friends, these are massive, huge bats, and what you probably can't see on the videos, there probably were at least 200.
I think there were more than that. Yeah, the trees were full of them. Yeah, full of them. Of course, it's during the day, so they're resting during the day.
But there was a lot of chatter. Even though they're resting, they were still chattery.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a surprise. We didn't know we were going to go out to do that, and our guide's like, I got to show you some wildlife. So he walked us, and we went on a little hike. The nice thing, too, while we were hiking to see the bats, we got to see the paper trees.
We did. Those were very cool.
Yeah, beautiful.
They felt like paper when you touched the bark of them.
Right, really large and just beautiful. The whole park was wonderful. We saw a black swan, but those bats, the bats were just amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty fascinating to watch.
Yeah, we almost couldn't take our eyes off of them, because we just sat and watched and kind of watched above us, make sure we didn't get pooped on. But they said you got to really watch for that. But no, that was really neat, seeing those bats in the wild like that.
It was. After Centennial Park, our tour returned us to the Sydney Opera House, which that gave us an opportunity to explore it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a beautiful structure, as you can see. Very modern. I kept thinking to myself, it almost looks like an Epcot exhibit, because
you said that.
Yeah, it's really almost how the past would see the future, just very ultra modern. What I never realized, of course, only ever seeing it on TV, because we got to go up and actually touch it. It's made from tiles, so the white you see is not actually white. It's kind of a mix of 2 different tile colors, and they're all off-white. They did that because if they made it white, they said it would just blind anybody that would look at it. And the interesting part is it's done so well. They constructed it so well. They have 10,000 of these tiles in reserve. but they haven't used any of them. None of the original tiles have cracked or they've had to replace them, is what they said. But that was really neat, actually seeing what the structure was made of. And then we got to go inside a little bit.
We did. We walked around just kind of in the atrium area. There's a little gift shop there. We were able to walk through that. So even though we didn't go see an opera, we can say we have been inside the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah, and again, very concrete, very kind of modern on the inside. We did have some friends that did attend the Magic Flute Opera. They said it was very good. There are actually 6 performance halls and 6 performance areas in the Sydney Opera House, plus a restaurant and a cafe and a bar, the Opera Bar, which is right along the river. So yeah, plenty to do there. Even if you don't go see an actual opera, you can spend plenty of time, and it is a beautiful view in there. So, well, after the Sydney Opera House, we had a little bit of time before our bridge walk, so we just decided to walk around Sydney a little.
Right. We kind of meandered our way as we worked back towards the Sydney Bridge because we were getting ready for the twilight climb. That was the climb that we were doing.
So we made it all the way back around to the rocks is where we had to walk to, and that's where the entrance was. Now, a couple things here. We went in. You can see the atrium here of where we got ready for our bridge climb, but there is no video. Once you go up, you have a very specific time. So if you ever do this, do not be late.
Right.
Ours was 6:25, and once you go up and they take you into the very first orientation room, you have to turn off your cell phones. No more recording is allowed. But what they did is you go through, you get oriented, and then they take you back to a dressing room. They hand you a jumpsuit, and they tell you to take as much of your clothes off or not as you want. It was a pretty warm day, so I did have my shorts and a T-shirt on under there. I think you wore a little less under your jumpsuit because it was pretty hot. But then you have to leave everything in a locker. You can take nothing up there with you for safety. So no phones. You have to take your watch off. You can wear a basic ring or some stud earrings, but nothing else. And in fact, after you get all dressed and get the jumpsuit on, you walk through a metal detector so they make 100% sure you don't have anything on you. And then after that, you go and you get harnessed up.
Right, you get all harnessed up, and then anything that they give you, you get headphones, and they wire you up, but everything is clipped to your jumpsuit. So for instance, even my eyeglasses, they had to put on a special attachment, and then they clipped it onto the back, so if you would lose your glasses, they're not going to fall down.
Right, the jumpsuit they give you have all these rings back in the back to do all that. So, and then we practiced a little, so they took us, you had to walk up 2 ladders while clipped in just like you would be on the bridge, go across a catwalk, and then go back down 2 ladders. This is all in their training center. And so to make sure you're comfortable, that you know what you're doing going up and down, then after that, we went out to climb the bridge.
We did, so that whole training portion took about an hour.
Yes. Yep.
And then so then we're going out to climb the Sydney Bridge. We walk across kind of a catwalk area, and the first thing you have to do is climb ladders. Then there's 4 sets of ladders. They're straight up. Each one was 25 steps because I counted them. The full amount of steps, just in case you're interested, they did tell us was 1,332 steps.
To go around the whole bridge, up and back down, So we went up those first 4 ladders. Actually, before that, we didn't mention, you do walk quite a ways out on the girders to get out to the bridge, and then you go up those ladders, and then you get up to the arch.
And you're also clipped on to a security wire. I mean, from right at the beginning, just as you're walking out of the visitors or to the area where you're preparing, you automatically get clipped onto this wire, and you are clipped on the entire way up and down. That clip, you're never unclipped.
And you can see us
the safety wire.
Right, and they took pictures. Those are the ones you're seeing here. And with those pictures, you can see the harnesses and everything. So it's very, very safe. You're in, kind of a walkway that has rails on the side, and those rails have those clips on it. But yeah, we walked all the way to the top. You stop about 4 times to take pictures. One time they take video. That's the video you saw in the very opening of today, and just beautiful views.
Well, it was
stunning.
Twilight, so as we were going up there, it's sunset, and it really was gorgeous. And like Mike said, that you will stop really pretty regularly, and honestly, the steps are not that high. They're
Yeah.
maybe, and they get shallower as they get
Yeah.
to the top.
Right.
So,
And sometimes they're only maybe 3 inches or so, and
Right.
it's almost like you're walking flat, you know, because it's so,
Almost,
yeah, and it's
it
very,
was
very
a
doable.
pretty easy walk, as long as you're not afraid of heights and some
Or the
people,
dark.
Yeah, or the dark. Some people go up there to conquer their fear of heights.
Yeah.
But that would be the only thing. But as far as physically, as long as you could climb the ladder and take steps, but really, like I said, the steps were easy.
Yeah, yeah. They do a very extensive medical form, and they make sure, do you have any conditions? They ask. One thing they do talk about, if you need to take up like asthma medication, if you do that, your guide actually carries it for you.
Right.
Excuse me, then if you would need it all the way up the bridge. But no, we had an
An
amazing
EpiPen,
time.
yeah.
And the neat thing, as you can see in some of the pictures, our ship was right below us. It had
That
docked
was
back
neat.
in the harbor, right across from the Opera House. This was one of the most beautiful ports that we have had on this entire trip, and probably will have on this entire trip. Quite amazing. So, you know, we don't want to go on too long. It was just amazing, and if anybody has the opportunity to climb the Sydney Harbor Bridge,
Yeah.
do it. There is no question, as long as you don't have this paralyzing fear of heights, which, by the way, the guides are trained to help people with that too. It's about an hour in preparation and training. It's about 90 minutes climbing the bridge and about a half hour to get undone. So it's a 3-hour event. So our climb was at 6:25. We finished about 9:30 at night. And by the way, pictures are included. So this with the package we had. So
Right.
it depends on the package you buy. You can buy your pictures extra, but ours were all included. And we did climb with an entire group of 12 from our ship. And Mary put that together. Thank you very much, Mary. And so we got a big group photo up at the top of the bridge too. So,
Yeah.
well, after we left the bridge, we were, as you can imagine, quite hungry and
Yeah,
thirsty.
we hadn't really had anything since lunch,
Yeah.
and there was at the Munich Brew House was Brewhaus.
Yeah.
Was close by there in the rocks, and since we used to live in Germany, we used to live just south of Munich. We decided to have supper there.
Right, and it was very good. It had a fried pork or a pork belly with crackling skin, and you had Spätzle beer and pretzel. It was really good, and you know, we finished that up. Luckily, we weren't in too big a hurry, but we did have to be back on board the ship before 11:30, and I think it was about 11:15 when we got back on the ship. So late night in Sydney, but one of the most
was a lot of fun.
amazing
That was-
days we've had on board this world cruise so far.
And like
Yeah.
we said, we would come back there, friends.
Yes, without question, without question. So, well, if you've enjoyed this video and enjoying all our videos, be sure to hit that like button if you've enjoyed seeing us go up the Sydney Bridge here, and subscribe and turn on those notifications. And as we also said, as we are wrapping up here, we should say, where are we heading tomorrow?
We are heading to
Newcastle.
Newcastle, excuse me.
That's right. We're going to Newcastle to tour some wineries. And so be sure to tune in for that. A beautiful area in Newcastle, Australia, in the Hunter Valley. And as we said, stay tuned after the music here, and we'll show you the whole sail-in going into Sydney. It's one of the most beautiful sail-ins you'll see. So thank you very much, everyone.
We appreciate you, friends. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.